A police officer calls 911 to report an assault. The person he wants arrested? The mother of his 6-month-old daughter. What should have been a routine custody exchange between two separated parents quickly turned into a domestic violence investigation. But almost immediately, officers discovered a problem. Both sides had completely different stories.
I record every time we exchange because she's gotten violent in the past. There was assault charges in January of
like that. He's literally a cop. Like, he's literally a cop.
Where is he? Is he a police?
One side said assault, the other said manipulation, and with no independent witnesses, officers would have to rely on body cam footage, recordings from inside the vehicle, and conflicting statements to figure out what really happened. The situation unfolded during what was supposed to be a routine child exchange. According to the man speaking with officers, he and his ex-partner met every week to exchange custody of their 6-month-old daughter. But this time, something went wrong. He tells officers he records every interaction with her due to previous incidents between them. And as he begins explaining the situation, it becomes clear this relationship has been deteriorating for months. The man claims his ex had become violent in the past and even references previous assault allegations.
I'm violent in the past. There was assault charges in January of last year when she was pregnant, but I ended up dropping it all. I got a protection order against her.
According to him, tensions escalated after she asked to go through his phone during the exchange. An argument followed. He claims she took his phone, stopped his recording, became angry after seeing something she didn't like, then physically assaulted him. At one point, he tells officers she struck him and covered his mouth, but his concerns extended beyond this single argument. He also accuses her of using marijuana while caring for their infant daughter and says previous attempts to involve police had gone nowhere. What stands out most is the frustration in his voice. Not just with the situation, but with a system he feels has repeatedly failed him, especially because, as he explains to responding officers, he works in law enforcement himself. Officers speak with the mother. As officers begin separating both parties, they move over to hear the woman's side of the story, and almost immediately, her version begins to differ. According to her, the argument started after she asked to look through his phone. She explains that while they were separated, the relationship remained complicated. They had not officially settled custody arrangements and were still trying to decide whether reconciliation was possible. She says tensions rose after she found things on his phone she didn't like. At first, she claims he resisted letting her see it, then eventually allowed her to look, but only while he held the device. That disagreement escalated into an argument inside her vehicle, and according to her, the real issue came afterward. She repeatedly asked him to leave the car, but she says he refused. Frustrated and wanting the conversation to stop, she admits placing her hand over his mouth.
And he's still talking, so I put my hand over his mouth.
Though she insists she did it gently, not violently, not aggressively, and certainly not in a way she considered assault. To her, this wasn't domestic violence. It was frustration during an emotional argument. And as she speaks with officers, another theme becomes obvious. She believes he is intentionally building a case against her, repeatedly mentioning that he calls police often and accusing him of using his law enforcement experience against her in an ongoing custody dispute. At this point, officers are left with two competing stories. Both acknowledge physical contact happened, but they disagree on what exactly occurred. That's when officers learn something important. There may be video evidence. The man explains that he routinely records every interaction between them because of previous conflicts. He says the argument began while he was already recording, but when she took his phone to look through it, the recording stopped. According to him, it only resumed after she handed the phone back. Officers review portions of the footage, and while the most critical moment appears missing, the recordings still help establish the timeline of events, the argument, the tension, the discussion surrounding the phone, and the aftermath immediately following the alleged assault. More importantly, officers say both parties essentially admit that physical contact occurred. The disagreement isn't over whether contact happened. It's over how it happened. The woman describes placing a hand over his mouth to stop him from talking. The man insists she backhanded him first and then covered his mouth and nose. Without independent witnesses, officers now have to determine whether probable cause exists for an arrest. And in domestic violence situations, that decision carries serious consequences. As officers continue their investigation, the facts become clearer, but the truth doesn't. Both parties admit physical contact happened. The disagreement is over what that contact looked like. The woman says she only placed a hand over his mouth after repeatedly asking him to leave the vehicle.
I started asking him to get out of my car, get out of my car, get out of my car. He would not get out of my car.
The officer claims she first struck him and then covered both his mouth and nose. Officers review recordings captured before and after confrontation. While the most critical moment isn't visible on camera, the footage helps establish the timeline leading up to the incident. And that's where things get complicated. Neither side is changing their story. Neither side has an independent witness, and both believe the other person is manipulating the situation. For officers, the question is no longer whether contact occurred. The question is whether that contact rises to the level of criminal assault. Because in domestic violence cases, probable cause, not certainty, is what determines whether an arrest is made. After comparing statements, reviewing the recordings, and speaking with both parties multiple times, officers reach a decision. After reviewing statements, listening to recordings, and comparing both accounts, they determine probable cause exists. The woman is informed she is under arrest for domestic violence and assault. The reaction is immediate. She becomes emotional, visibly upset. At one point, she asks to see the video herself. She argues the situation is unfair and again points to the fact that he works in law enforcement. In her mind, this wasn't justice, it was manipulation. But officers remain firm. Their explanation is simple. Regardless of frustration, putting hands on another person crosses a line, especially in domestic violence investigations where physical contact has been admitted. As tensions rise, officers work to calm the situation while also discussing arrangements for the couple's 6-month-old child. Eventually, she is taken into custody, and the scene comes to an end.
Please, I have a 6-month-old daughter. Please, I never hit her.
Cases like this are rarely simple, especially when relationships, children, and unresolved emotions are involved. For responding officers, domestic calls often become some of the most difficult situations to investigate. There are usually 2 versions of the truth, strong emotions, and years of history compressed into a single moment. In this case, both parties admitted contact occurred, but what actually happened inside that car may still be debated. Was this a frustrated reaction during an emotional argument, or was it a clear act of assault? That decision ultimately moved beyond the roadside conversation. But one thing is clear, what began as a routine custody exchange ended with handcuffs, accusations, and a relationship that appeared far more toxic than either side may have wanted to admit. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown of real police body cam footage, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more real-life police encounters and body cam investigations. And if you thought this case was intense, wait until you see what happens in this next body cam footage. Click the next video on your screen. Trust me, this one takes an even crazier turn.